Welcome to the Chai Academy, and by extension, welcome to the Chai Center. So we try to give this class daily or a few times per week, and different courses on different subjects, etc. Each one can stand on its own, and we are discussing in this particular course Genesis. So we have finished Genesis chapter 1, and you could find this online. We'll tell you how in a minute. We're about to finish Genesis chapter 2, and today we'll conclude chapter 2, and pretty much we are going to go into chapter 3. So the first chapter pretty much deals with the creation of the world. We went through each day. We went through Shabbat, the seventh day, the Saturday. The second chapter really spoke about how God fleshed out humankind, how He made the human, how He made and the animals, and how He instructed man to rule over the animals and protect the garden, protect the world, etc. And we also were taught, and we've discussed this at great length, that God said that there's a tree in the garden. It's called the tree of knowledge between good and evil. That tree, you shall not partake of it. So we've gone through the instruction is what's so wrong to tap into the tree of knowledge. So we've discussed that. We've also discussed what type of tree it was. And by the way, in a nutshell, what's so wrong about the tree of knowledge is that you know, it's now your knowledge. It's not God's knowledge. It's and a human being can take God's thought and warp it and justify anything. So we discussed that. Just want to tell you something very interesting about God's command. God's command said that if you will partake of this fruit, of this tree of knowledge, the day you partake of it, you will die. Right? And we discussed yesterday a little bit. However, there's a fascinating midrash, and just caught my eye last night. This midrash says that when Eve was the first one to take from the fruit, and Eve gave it to Adam, she didn't only give it to Adam, says this midrash. And by the way, this midrash was written 2,500 years ago. So she didn't only give it to Adam, she gave it to every animal. So she gave a little bit of this fruit, and there was discussion what type of fruit it was. Clearly it was not the apple. And she gave it to every animal and every bird and anything that walks and swims and flies and creeps. She gave it to everyone. However, says the midrash, there was one particular species that refused to take it. This is the midrash from 2,500 years ago. It's pretty wild. And he says, what was it? They say, it was a bird. What type of bird? So the midrash says that Rabbi Yanai is from the Talmudic times. Rabbi Yanai said that it's a bird that lives 1,000 years. And after 1,000 years, it combusts. And all that's left is an egg where a new bird is born. Right? To me, I mean, what bird are we talking about? We're talking about the phoenix, right? And I find it fascinating. You have the phoenix in pretty much every single culture. You know, Indian culture and Chinese culture and you know, the theologies and anything and everything. You have it everywhere, this rising out of the ashes, the phoenix, right? And I find that it's something interesting when every single culture, a lot of cultures have something, it's usually godly. it's usually they're tapping into the Torah, they're tapping into godliness, they're tapping into godly creation. And I'm going to give an example, right? I'm going to give an example, right? Most societies have something called a day of rest, right? So we know in the Torah it says keep Shabbat on the seventh day, but you have Islam, they keep it on the day before Shabbat. Christianity, the day of rest, is after Shabbat. So it's connected somehow. It's connected perhaps with a twist, but it is connected. So what the Torah and Judaism offers is incredible, because this day of rest, this day of internalizing and nurturing, self-nurture, came straight from the Torah. It was God's idea. God understood the human, and it was God's idea. So I just thought that is an interesting midrash that I recently saw. However, let's go into chapter 3. So Genesis chapter 3, and this will take place over a few days because we have to flesh out a few different things. The gist of chapter 3 is that the snake came over to Eve and said to Eve, her name was Chava, and said, Eve, God said you're not allowed to touch Eve heard it from Adam, by the way. God said you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to eat and from this tree, from this fruit of this tree, because the day you do, you would die. So Eve said, no, you're not allowed. God said, did say that. God said that you're not allowed to eat from it. God said you're not allowed to even touch it. So then the snake responded, malarkey. And he pushed her, she touched the tree, and nothing happened. So he says, it's all made up. It's all made up. And God just doesn't want you to eat from this fruit, because when you eat this fruit, you will become like God. And just like God, and God's worried about it. Just like God, went on to create things, and God does this and does that and rules the roost, God doesn't want to have competition. God doesn't want to rule the roost. And so therefore it's okay to eat. So it was Tov L'Nayim. She looked at the fruit and she goes, wow, I can gain power. I can become, the Secretary of State if I do this. Wowzers. And she proceeded to take from this fruit and she ate it. She gave it to Adam, and Adam ate it. And then, as we said, she gave it to all the animals except the phoenix. So I think, and that's the story. And God said, okay, you did this, there's consequences, get out of the Garden of Eden. You're going to have to work hard. By the sweat of your brow, you are going to have to work the land. There's going to be thorns, and there's going to be thistles, and it's going to be right in order to get bread, in order to get food. And to Eve, I'm telling you now, be'etzev tel dibonim, you're going to have a hard time, having children, rearing children, right? And as far as the snake goes, right, you're going to be at war with each other. He's going to bite your heel, and you're going to smash its head. You're going to beat it. That is, right? That is pretty much chapter 3. That is chapter 3. But I think that if we just read it, as written, we can read it as written, and this is what happened. But I have a lot of questions, and I want to give you another insight. And over the course of a few days, I think we'll be talking about other insights as well as to what really went on here. So let's begin. First question: historians, right, in the book of Sefer HaToldos, the book of history, Jewish history, it says that Adam and Eve were created, 9 hours into the day. So let's say the day started at 6 a.m., a perfect day. It was the Vernox, it was around then, right? So they were created about 3 p.m. Right? 1 hour later, Adam and Eve ate of this fruit, right? And when they ate of this fruit, and it was called a chet, a sin. God saw them eat this fruit, and he goes over to Adam. This is part of the story. He goes over to Adam and goes, "Why did you eat the fruit I told you not to?" So Adam says, Eve told me to. Eve, why did you eat the fruit? The snake made me do it. So here, let's lay it out. Let's flesh this out. This is a bizarre story. 1 hour? 1 hour later? Is God that unimpressive? Right? Did they look at God and say, who cares what he says? I mean, we know when the ancient Hebrews, they received the Torah at Mount Sinai, 2,500 years later, God started with the Decalogue, with the Ten Commandments, and they passed out of fear. Right? So it seems like God had no, right? No, he didn't make any impression. Don't eat it. Get lost. Right? And you can't say Adam and Eve said, "Is he talking to me? Is he talking to me?" There was no one else. Of course he was talking to him. So you can't start saying, no, he didn't say it to me. He said it to Joe. He said it to Jeff. He said it to Ryan. No, he said it to Adam. Clearly, he said it to Adam. There was no one else. So did God come across meek? Did God come across, like a little wishy-washy? Did God come across that I don't really mean what I say. I mean, how do we? 1 hour. 1 hour. So at some point we're going to have to talk about that 1 hour, but if not today, tomorrow. Right? The second thing is Adam and Eve were created by God. Right? They had no parent. They had no trauma from a parent toilet training them. They were 20 years old and they conversed with God clearly. Even though they were 1 hour old, they were 20 years old. So they had no birth trauma. They had no parent that gave them this issues. They didn't have toilet training trauma. They didn't have peers to lead them in a bad way. And they were created by God. I mean, how much holier can you get by being directly created by God and not by the sexual union of a man and a woman? Right? How, this has got to be, right? And furthermore, they didn't even have an evil inclination. They didn't have friends to whisper in their ear, peers or colleagues. They didn't have an evil inclination, but yet they did it. And once again, they did it in an hour, only an hour. Right? That's another question, right? Another question that we have is that, so some opinions feel it was a fig, as we discussed, a grape, etc. Now, this really a fig? A fig made you violate God's will, right? If it was a steak sandwich, I get it, right? If it was the eye of the ribeye, I get it. If it was just something exquisite, right? I get it. I do get it. But it was a fig. Would you violate God's command over a fig, or would you violate God's command over something much greater? Right? I don't think anybody would consciously get themselves in trouble over a fig. Maybe a starving person who cannot stand the hunger anymore picks a fruit that happens to be a fig. But who would consciously get in trouble over a fig? Right? God told him, next question, God told him, the day, right, you eat from it, you will die. Now, here's a person, right, who's, they're an hour old, right? You know, they say the younger you are, the less you think about death, right? When person, as we get older and older, that we start thinking about our own mortality. You tell a 15-year-old to buy life insurance, they're going to laugh at you, right? You know, you tell a 20-year-old, you tell a 27-year-old who's just got married, they'll listen and buy a little bit. And then as you get older and older, you start thinking about mortality, and make other decisions, and you make a will, and you know, so et cetera, et cetera. They were 1 hour old. And by the way, did they even know what death meant? Right? Did they even know what death meant? What is death? What is death? So, you know, when God threatened them, and they said that the day you eat it, you'll die. What die? What die? What is death? Right? Also, I think it's a little confusing if you look at the actual words, because the day you eat it, you will die. It doesn't say if you eat it, you will die. The day you will eat it, you will die. It's kind of a little bit of a confusing message there. And then once they ate it, God said, Adam, what's going on? So, what did he do? Right? He blamed Chava. He blamed Eve. I mean, come on. I mean, you know, the corruption began. You know, the blame game began already. It was only 1 hour old and already blaming. It's not my fault. It's this fault. It's that fault. And I didn't do it. I was just I was just in the runaway car, but I no idea they were going to rob the bank. And they already stopped pointing fingers, right? But when you blame Eve, stand up and say, I did. Yeah, I ate it. You stop blaming Eve, right? What kind of nonsense is that? You're talking to God, who sees all, knows what happened, and he goes, no, don't blame me. Look. It's not my fault. It's her fault, right? Which, by the way, just parenthetically, a man and a wife, a husband and a wife, are one item. So if the wife's in trouble, the husband's in trouble. The husband's in trouble, the wife's in trouble. It's one entity, right? And here they both got trouble together. For you to say it's her, not me, I mean, he's talking that about his wife. No, take her, God, take her. It's her fault. Grab her by the neck and schlep her to the guillotine. It's his wife. Right? That in itself is bizarre. It seems so. Maybe this was. I'm saying maybe this is how they used to be, but I guess Adam and Eve used to be. So. But it's not becoming of Adam, created by God, to issue this weak, morally corrupt response that it's her fault. I think we come to another question that I can think of. What did God tell them? God told them is that the day you eat from it, you will die. That was, God said, that's the punishment. That's the punishment. But what happened? What happened? What was the consequence of the sin? It wasn't death. As soon as they ate from it, God met them in the garden, and we have a lot to talk about in over the coming few days. God met them in the garden, and God said, what happened? You ate from it, Eve, snake, okay, you ate from it when I told you not to eat from it, and you ate from it. Okay, here are the consequences of your actions. And guess what? It wasn't death. It was, Adam, get out of the Garden of Eden. You're going to have a lot of pain, Adam. You're going to have to work by the sweat of your brow and get stuck by thorns and thistles and have a hard life trying to make ends meet to live. Right? That wasn't part of the deal. Right? You're changing the punishment on the guy? You told me he's dead. He's dead. Let him die. Right? But here, no, God said, no, I'm taking back that death thing. Of course, yes, they lost their immortality, but Mois Thomas, you shall surely die. But God never said anything about their pain and their suffering. You will die. Eve, he says, you are going to have pain by childbirth, pain by child rearing, right? And you're going to be the fairer sex, right? You want to schlep a big box? Generally, you're going to have to ask your husband because you're going to be the weaker sex, right? And you're gonna. So that wasn't part of the deal. Wasn't part of the equation. It doesn't add up. And I think if I could ask, did they have children prior to this? It's hard to know. It's hard to know from whether it was prior or after. I don't know. So by the way, Eve was designed. Eve was designed to and all women for that matter, they were gonna get pregnant, a few months, pop out a child, no pain. Right? Just pop out a kid. Instead, now they have all this pain and suffering. Right? And now we do things to avoid the pain and suffering. We take an epidural, or we give birth in a pool or upside down. I don't know. They have different things. I have a sister who she's had 7 kids. God bless her. And when she gets to the hospital, they say name, and she goes, "Listen very careful. Listen very carefully. My name is Epidural." And I go, "What?" I go, "Last name, Epidural. Address, Epidural. You get nothing out of me until you give me an epidural. Speak to my husband. I want an epidural now." So she, she fights for this epidural. She doesn't want pain. Who wants pain? But that wasn't part of the deal. Part of the deal was that they would die. Another question. When they first ate from the forbidden fruit, right? When they first ate from that forbidden fruit, what happened? They heard God walking in the garden. And they hid because they were embarrassed. And they made themselves fig leaves for clothing because they were embarrassed that they were naked. They were naked and afraid. That was the original episode, by the way. Naked and afraid. Right then in the garden after they ate from the forbidden fruit. And so they quickly put on some fig leaves before the cameras came and before the paparazzi, and they covered themselves. And God said, "Adam, Ayeka, where are you? Adam, where are you?" So Rashi says right on the spot that God knew where he was, of course, but God did not want to, traumatize Adam. So he was trying to, Adam, looking for you. Where are you? Right? He wanted to coax him out, etc. That also has to play a part in this. The God is asking him, "Ayeka, where are you?" There's a phenomenal story with the first Chabad Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. So he lived in Tsarist Russia, and he used to raise money for the poor in Israel. The problem is Israel was under the Ottoman Empire, which is at war with Tsarist Russia. So the Ottomans versus the Russians. So he was told, someone ratted him out to the government that he is raising money for the Ottoman Empire. He was arrested, and he was sentenced to imprisonment and for treason. And he used to get, there were people that came into his, um, people came into his cage or wherever he was and interrogated him. So one time they came in, a Russian individual. So he goes, I want to ask you a question. He goes, and he's a Gentile. Right? He says, I'm very knowledgeable of the Bible. And the Torah says, Ayeka. God says, Ayeka, where are you? And why would God say Ayeka? So the Alter Rebbe started to respond that God wanted to coax him out, etc. So the Russian official said, I know what Rashi says. I want to hear what you have to say. Something different than what Rashi says, which is amazing. He knew what Rashi says. So the Alter Rebbe says, do you believe the Torah is eternal? Do you believe the Torah is written for all times? So it was just him and the Alter Rebbe, and he said, yes, in fact, I do. I believe the Torah is a divine document. Not that I can practice it in Russia, but me personally, my own feeling is I believe the Torah has a lot of wisdom and it's eternal. So he says, and do you believe that Adam refers to mankind, not just Adam the man, Adam this particular person? He goes, yeah, of course, the Torah is written for, right? There's a lot of metaphors and allegories, etc. So he says, what God is saying, and he says that you, for example, who's 56 years old, which was the guy's age, God is asking you, Ayeka, where are you in life? Where are you? Are you happy? Are you sad? Have you reached your pinnacle? Have you not? Are you striving for better? Are you happy in your marriage? Are your kids doing well? Ayeka. It's a general question. How you doing? But not just as a coaxing, but really, how are you doing? Have you thought through everything? So the Russian official goes, bravo, bravo, bravo. He goes, it's amazing, and you knew my age. And they say this Russian official was very instrumental in getting the Alter Rebbe released from prison for treason back to his hometown. So Ayeka, right, what does it really mean? What was God asking him? In addition to Rashi, God was asking him, God was trying to coax him, but what did God want from him? So these questions, I believe, need to be answered because they defy logic. I think they're very valuable questions, and they defy logic, and they need to be answered. And the answer is in addition to just the story. And I think, by the way, that's another question. While I'm thinking about it, why did God share this story? Okay, it happened. I get it. But you have to put this in literally your first couple of pages of the Torah. I think it's the third column. You really have to, right? That here the first human being was corrupt, was a finger pointer, and right, and furthermore, it's depressing. It's depressing. If Adam could not withstand temptation, who was created by God recently, what chances do we have? What can we do? We're finished. We're sunk. So these questions have to be answered, and please God, we will attempt to answer them in tomorrow's class. Any questions? You can ask here. You can also ask rabbi@thechaicenter.com. And you can see previous classes or a review of this class before tomorrow, for example, at thechaicenter.com/academy. Now, I know it's a cliffhanger, and I apologize for that. I know it's a cliffhanger. However, you know what? Maybe share it with a few people, and they'll come on tomorrow because of the cliffhanger. Hope everybody's well, happy, and ask yourself, Ayeka, where are you?